Hello everybody, welcome to this webinar on Salesforce Lightning interface. We are going to be talking about ways to make the Lightning user experience just a little bit better, make it easier for people to update opportunities, to keep information up to date and current. And of course, that will all wash through into better user adoption and really more accurate opportunities, better visibility of the pipeline, and just better sales forecasting and so on. So welcome to the webinar. I'm your host, I'm Gary Smith. I'm pleased to say that also on the call is my colleague, Ben Affleck-Curry. Are you there, Ben? Can you hear me?
I am here. Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining us today. I'll be handling the majority of the questions and everything today. So if anyone has any questions, feel free to use the questions panel on GoToWebinar, as always. And please do ask questions because that's why we're here.
Okay, excellent. Thanks, Ben. And I'll ask you a question 1 second, Ben, because this really is a very current subject as more and more people are making the transition to Lightning, as more and more companies have already made the transition but are also looking for ways to improve the experience in Lightning. And of course, many people like myself, in fact, I've been deploying Salesforce since 2003, and really the classic interface is probably burned into every blood vessel in my retina. So I had to make that jump. I had to make that learning experience and learn how to use the Lightning experience. And one of the things I found is that especially when you approach it with a fresh eyes, then there are ways to improve the experience, to make it a bit easier for people to use. And I'll illustrate that in just 1 second. But I said, Ben, this is I think this is this the most popular webinar? How many people did we have register?
Yeah, I believe so. I think this is our most popular. Last I checked, just before we started, we had 235 registrants for this one.
Okay.
So it's definitely a high performer for us.
Yeah, and that really just highlights the importance of this subject. So that's me on the left-hand side as you look at the screen. That's Ben over on the right, and here are the topics. Here are the 12 or so topics that we are going to cover, and I'm going to just whiz through each one. We're going to try and do this in about half an hour or so we'll go to fairly quick pace. So we'll return to this list at the end, but I'm going to illustrate each of these items in Salesforce now. So let's just jump in, and this just by way of illustration, actually, this is a brand new virgin Salesforce environment that I actually just spun up earlier today. So it's had nothing done to it. It's got a few sample records and so on, but I've done absolutely nothing to it in terms of the configuration. And often, I've had this experience many times myself, is that people are very used to the classic interface. They switch on Lightning, they go and have a look at it, and they think, my goodness, what is going on here? And they find it very difficult to navigate through the interface and so on. So if you're familiar with that experience, then it's probably generated from a screen, something like this. As I say, this is the out of the box, so to speak, Lightning environment. And if it loads, there we are. Let's have a quick look at an account, and you can see that the information is quite disparate. It's quite spread out. It's actually hard if you're familiar with the classic interface. It's quite hard to understand what the heck is going on here. So that's a fresh new version of Salesforce in Lightning. This is a version of Lightning that I've just tidied up a little bit. There we go. There's an opportunity. So you can see that we've made a number of changes to the page layout and so on. So the very first of those things that you might want to consider changing is actually two very similar versions of the Lightning interface, and they are called Comfy and Compact. If I go to the Comfy section, so you do it by clicking on this. Cog at the top here, and sorry, not in the cog. And we're on the compact interface at the moment. If I just change that to comfy, you can already see that the information is much more spread out. There's a much greater amount of white space between the different sections of the pages and so on. And if I switch it back to the compact version, I don't really have a strong view as to which one people should be using, but so experiment and test. This is something that you can set on a user basis. So encourage users, show users how to switch between the two. That whole thing about whether you use the compact or the comfy interface, that's entirely up to each individual user. So just make sure that people know how to use that. And the other things that you notice whenever you go to, when you first start to use Lightning and you open it, then you obviously have these three tabs on every page. And if we just go to an opportunity, you can see that by default, the Lightning will immediately take you to the activities tab on any page, particularly on things like opportunities and so on. Now, that, in my opinion, is one of the reasons why people who first open Lightning do get a bit confused. If you actually watch people using Lightning for the first time, and if they haven't modified this, the very first thing they always do is click on that Details tab. So people don't, particularly in my experience, even if there are a lot of activities, they don't immediately want to see the activities. They want to see the details about the opportunities. So they click straight on the Details tab and review the details. So why not? And this is really I would say, in my experience of implementing Lightning to several hundred companies now, I would say this is probably the number one thing. Make that Details tab the default, and you do it by just modifying the page layout and changing the tab values across the top here. In fact, you can see on this particular version of the Lightning layout, I've actually removed all of the other tabs from here. Now, this is again a matter of opinion. It's personal style and so on. You see, even if I had the related section here, I would still make the details the default tab. So if you only do one thing, make the details the kind of default tab that people land on any record, whether it's accounts, contacts, opportunities, leads, or whatever it is. And let me just show you a few of the other changes that we've made to this page. So the related lists, you might think, well, where are the related lists? And the related lists are here in this version. We absolutely could have them as another tab on here, but in this version of the Lightning interface, we have them here, and just hovering over the related list would take me to the products or to the contact roles or to any other information you might have related to this opportunity. Likewise, if it's an account, we've moved this related list quick links over onto the right-hand side of the page here, and I can use that to actually go to any of the more detailed sections, and you can see the usual buttons that you'd expect to see there, and so on. So I tend to put the related lists as a quick links. Sometimes we would also have them as a separate section down the page here, and in fact that's what we have here. You see the related list scrolling down the page. I also personally tend to remove things like the news. You get that news tab on every record. I usually remove it. I can't really think what news there might be about an opportunity. You obviously see that news tab on things like the contacts and so on. Maybe I can see the benefit of having it on the account, but in terms of improving the page layout and so on, I typically remove the news tab and the related list. So I've got the related list over on the right hand side here. I also usually pay a little bit of attention to this to the highlights panel at the top here. You can have up to 6 fields on this highlights panel. And on an opportunity, typically you're going to want to see the close date, the amount, and in this case, I've got the Lightning path visible, so I can immediately see where we're up to in terms of the opportunity stage. If I didn't have the path enabled, I'd definitely put the stage as one of the additional values at the top here. So give that some thought. It's just an easy way for people to quickly assimilate the key information about any record. So go through each of the Lightning pages, accounts, contacts, leads, what have you, and just have a think about the fields that you want to appear on the highlights panel here at the top. Now, since we're on the subject of fields that should appear, there's a lot of contention about the number of related list fields that appear. So in this particular case, you can see that on this product related list, we've got 4 fields. You can only have 4 fields show up on the related list, on any related list in Lightning, whereas in Classic you can have as many fields as you can squeeze onto the page layout, really. I mean, I've seen people with far too many fields on, but typically my people might have 5 or 6 fields on any related list. In Lightning, you can only have up to 4 fields. So think very hard about those 4 fields that you might want to, especially, for example, if you are using products, then the default fields, you get the quantity, you get the sales price, but also you get the product date and the line item description. And I don't know anybody really that uses the product date. It's not strictly true, but very, very few people use the product date field, and not that many people use the line item description field there either. So just have a good think about the items that you want to appear there, because in terms of usability, this is quite a big thing, I think. You want to be able to easily see the important information. Certainly on an account, when you look at an account, you look at things like contacts and so on an account, then the related fields on contacts, if I remember, are the phone, the email, and the person's name. Well, that's okay, but you certainly probably want to add the mobile phone field, so it's the title, email, and phone, and that's okay. Many people would also want to see the mobile phone here, so make that visible on the page layout as well. So have a think carefully about the fields that are going to be most useful to your users when you're adjusting the page layouts. Now you might be wondering where the activities section is on this particular page layout. Let's just go and have a look at it out of the box, and you can see the activities section here. Now there's probably more frustration about this activities section on the page layout than kind of everything else put together, because okay, I get that you might want to write an email about an opportunity, but frankly, not that many people do send emails from Salesforce directly relating to opportunities. You do see it a lot more on cases, but I don't really know anybody who uses that email function on opportunities, but there it is, lurking under the activities section. Now you might be wondering, particularly if you're familiar with the Classic interface, where are the logo call button and the new task buttons and so on, because on this page I've removed the tab, and this is a preferential thing, but I've actually put them at the bottom of the page. So I'm trying to get more information onto kind of one scrollable page. That's a matter of personal preference, but you can see I've got the logo call button, and I've got the new task button. So replicating the functionality that's available in Classic there, and that logo call button is probably one of the most underrated but simple features for recording a note about what you have just done, as opposed to what you will do in the future. Now I've put it, in this case, I've put it at the bottom of the page so people can scroll down and see it there. Sometimes people quite like it at the top of the page, or underneath the quick links, and between the quick links and the other related items, and that I think is absolutely fine. And I've absolutely nothing against it being as a separate tab here, other than I think it's just one more click to go to it. I generally use a mouse. I'm not using a mouse at the moment. My mouse has got a wheel on the top, and I find it quite easy to scroll up and down. So so that's where I personally prefer to put it. Now, the source of a lot of frustration really is, well, hang on a minute, where the heck are the log a call button and the new task buttons? You're clearly going to want to use those. And to use a bit of the technical phrase, it's a bit of a faff to add those two things to the page layout. You've got to go through each page layout. Really, what you want to do is modify the page layout. I don't know if we can do it just quickly with the internet here, but really what you want to do is modify the page layout and add those. It's really a two-step process. You have to add those actions to the Lightning actions section of the page layout. So go into the page layout that you're using and add the two, add the log a call, add the new task, and anything else you want for that matter, but add the items. So let me just quickly show you that. And just to add to the confusion, I opened up the page from I was clicked on the activity tab. You need to be clicked on the details tab. And I won't go through the process just in the interest of time. But basically, go and add the two actions to the Lightning section of the page layout. That's the bit where you'd normally edit the page in Classic. So add the log call, add the new task button, and then you need to, after you've done that. What you can see here is I've also modified it further, so that will get the log call and new task onto this section of the page layout. But you can see what I've also done here, and I think this is good practice whether you're in Classic or whether you're in Lightning. I've done two things. I've made the due date mandatory. It's not mandatory by default, but I've made the due date mandatory because if you don't make it mandatory, people will create tasks with no date in them, so they will be sitting around in the ether, which isn't very good from a reporting point of view or keeping track of your future tasks in particular. They'll just be sitting there. And I've also added the type field, and I've made that mandatory as well. These are the standard values you get with the activity type field or the task type field. You might want to modify those to include presentation and video conference and whatever else is appropriate, but I've made the type field as well, and the principal reason for that is from a reporting point of view. It means we can run reports of different activities, and to do that you need to in the setup you need to modify the global actions setup section. So you modify the page layout on global actions, add the two fields to the page layout of global actions, make them mandatory, and that will get these extra two fields onto this page layout. So as I say, it's a bit of a two-step process. Add the quick actions on the standard page layout editor, and then in setup go to global actions and add any other fields that you see fit, such as the due date and type field. Now, let's move on. You can see on this opportunity...
Gary, sorry, just before you move on, Gary, we just had a comment while you were discussing that about activities.
Yes.
Someone said that one challenge they found is with activities not being expanded by default. Do you think you covered that in that, or is there anything else you could speak on? Regarding that?
Strangely, I think it's strange. But if you've got a lot of activities, they actually go in the furthest time away. They go into they come at the top of the list, and the most up to date or the near time activities go at the bottom of the page, and that actually, if you've got a lot of future activities, that hides them. I don't really have an ideal solution to that, but I agree it's a bit of frustration, and at the moment you can't reverse that order, whereas you could do that in the Classic interface. You could set the default ascending or descending based on date. You can't do that currently in the Lightning interface, so I'm not sure I've got a particularly good response to that, but I kind of empathise with whoever asked that question. Anything else on that, Ben?
No, nothing now.
Okay.
That's okay.
Okay, I'm going to talk about this the Lightning path in just a second, but you can see we've got one product added to this opportunity, and I am generally an advocate of using products on opportunities. And it was never particularly easy in the Classic interface to add products to the opportunities. The kind of window that you got for selecting the products was sort of painfully small, really. If I just click on in Lightning, if I just click on Add Products, I want to go and add some more products. Do you know what? I find it even more frustrating because first of all, products that you've previously looked at or you've previously selected on other opportunities, they get in the way. So you can see I don't want one of these products at the moment, but they're kind of hiding it. And in this Salesforce environment, we haven't got that many products. I think we've got about 25, 30 products in the Salesforce environment. And the height of this pane is recently introduced, but nevertheless, I've got to go through and so I'll choose that generator and go through an icon. And that's not too bad. It's a bit easier. That bit of it is a little bit easier than it is in Classic, but I could go through and add my details. You might want to remove, it's not really a Lightning thing, it's a general Salesforce thing. You might want to remove any of those other fields from the page layout if they're not relevant. But there we go, and we've added another product. Now, the challenge is really that if you've got a lot of products, that's a bit of a cumbersome interface. So if you've got a lot of products that people need to cast their eye on to select, then it's not desperately easy. So this is a function that we've deployed to a number of customers, and one that we plan to launch on the App Exchange next month. And it's a product selection wizard, and it just makes the process of adding products to opportunities in Lightning, I think, a lot easier. So it groups the products. In this case, we are grouping them by product family. You can see that they're grouped here. You have flexibility to decide how you want to categorize the products. So if you have other pick lists on the product object, you can either add those to it, create a sort of nested hierarchy, or you can replace the product family with whatever pick list you happen to be using. You can see that these two items are checked because we've previously added them in the conventional way to the opportunity. But really, the idea is I can go down here and we'll have a bit of we'll have a bronze maintenance item as well, and I'm not selling it for $10,000. I'm going to sell it for $7,000, let's say. And you can see we've got a running total of the products that have been added so far, and the running total of the price to date. So I can expand and contract these values. There's also a search function at the top, so we can go and find other items as well that we might be interested in. So let's have a bit of user training as well to go with this one. So you can also add bundles of products, packages of products, and that will you can select a package, and that will add multiple items to the opportunity at the same time. So it's just an easier way to add products to opportunities. We sell it at the moment for the kind of out of the box version for $3,500, $3,500 as a one-off fee. And we will obviously implement it and set it up for you within that price. We are planning to launch it on the App Exchange next month, and we'll charge on a subscription basis for that. So using some method anyway of making it easier to add products to opportunities definitely makes the usability easier. But I found it also gives you much more accurate product set on the opportunity as well. So let's talk about let's just quickly talk about the Lightning path. So you can see I've got the Lightning path here enabled, and we can go and update the opportunity in that way. And that's definitely quicker than having to either edit the opportunity or double clicking on the stage. And I quite like that. I think it's just an easy way to move opportunities around. I've also enabled the guide here as well, the full path. So as I go through the different stages, I've just put in a few notes about what each of those stages might mean. Now, not everybody needs to use this. but I find it as a useful aid memoir either when you've got relatively inexperienced salespeople, or when you're using some sort of sales playbook. You can put quite a bit more information and links and so on into the guide here. We had a customer recently that completely changed their stages, and they had a lot of ambiguity between the stages previously, so they used this method for removing that ambiguity and making it much clearer to people. I think the other potential benefit of doing this is where you've got a lot of validation rules, perhaps, particularly towards the latter part of the sales process. You might have a lot of validation rules that before it can be closed won, or before it can go into negotiation, there might be a lot more information that you've got to capture. So you can reduce some of that sort of salesperson frustration by just making it clear what they've got to fill in, or giving them some pointers as to what they've got to do. There is a setting where you can enable, so that's always it always remembers what the person did, whether they had it open or contracted last time. I've got that switched off, and so it will always show in the sort of contracted version in this particular Salesforce environment. Now, since we're on the subject of updating opportunities, I do like the Kanban view in Lightning. You know, one of the biggest challenges in any Salesforce environment is just getting accurate visibility of the pipeline, accurate visibility of the sales forecast, and you know, it's in some companies it's a challenge to get the guys to update them. So I've created just a list view. This isn't a standard list view. The closing next month is a standard view, but I've got closing of this month, which I think is the most important list view you can have, because you want people to certainly to update opportunities that are due to close this month, and that's the Lightning version of a standard list view that you'd expect to find in the Classic interface. If I go and click on that button there, that square button, I can view that in the Kanban environment. And really what it's providing is a quicker, faster, easier way for salespeople to keep opportunities up to date. And the reason it's quicker and it's easier is I can take any of these opportunities and I can move them around, I can drag and drop them, I can update the stage and just move them around like that. So it's a way of, I can go in and edit the opportunity in full as well. So it's a way of just keeping things up to date and just speeding up the process of keeping the pipeline accurate and timely. So as soon as I drag and drop them into another, then I'm saving them cases and different customers objects as well. But I really like it on the opportunities tab. So just think about the list views that will be useful to people. You know, maybe my pipeline is a probably critical one, closing this month, closing next month. You might even have one, you know, opportunities with close dates in the past, and just make it easy for people to update those. Let's talk a little bit about Salesforce dashboards, because since we are talking about pipeline visibility, and this is a dashboard actually that many of you I know already have, because you can download it for free from the App Exchange. It's one of ours, which we published on the App Exchange. If you go to the App Exchange and search for GSP Sales Dashboard, then and install it, you will get a dashboard that looks like this. So I'll just scroll down and I'll refresh it in a second. But there's a dashboard, the close date, size of deals, conversion rates, opportunities most likely to close, key metrics. I don't know whether you saw on the opportunity there, we had some metrics about the number of times the opportunity has moved from one month to the next, number of days since the last stage change, and so on. They're all features that you can get if you go to the App Exchange and search for GSP Sales Dashboard. It's a free dashboard, and it looks pretty much like this. Often people will want to color and shade certain areas of the dashboard to highlight. I've got just an example here. So in this dashboard, you can see we've got some metrics there, and I've just highlighted there the what I think is the most important chart on the dashboard. So these are our short-term metrics, and this is the kind of most important long-term metric. So it's just another way of bringing the eye to the most important information. So one of the frustrations that I and everybody else had with the Classic interface was that you had the 3 columns, and you always had 3 columns. You had a tiny bit of flexibility with whether you made those columns narrow or medium or wide. I always made them wide anyway, and that was pretty much it. And you had the sort of 3 columns and boxes. As you can see, you have much more flexibility with a Lightning dashboard. So be bold. You can set the dashboard to run either with in the background, either with 9 columns or with 12 columns. My advice would be always to go with a 12-column version. It just gives you a bit more flexibility in terms of how you move these metrics and so on around. And I think certainly these are much more attractive on the eye. You've got flexibility to really bring the eye to the important information. That's the metrics one that I was talking about a minute ago. Things like conversion rates. There won't be many businesses with a conversion rate of 90%, but you know, you've got a lot more flexibility. I personally always use the standard color palette. I've experimented with other colors and always sort of come back to the standard Lightning color palette. And one of the features I really do like, one of the things about the Classic dashboard was you can drill down and then you could show the details, and then you could open up each opportunity in a separate tab, but you really had to navigate away from the report to do that. So in my opinion, you'll have, if you've been on some of my other webinars, you'll have heard me talk about this particular report. It's a simple report, but it shows the pipeline by stage and by close date. And you know, if you only build one report, build this one, because this is the one that's most valuable in terms of managing the pipeline. And what I'm hoping to do, if it loads, is just scroll down a bit, because there's a feature here that I'd like to show you. And I'm just going to, just to make it easier, I'm just going to toggle the chart off. That's it. What I really like about this is that this is much easier than the Classic interface. So let's say we're in June now. We've got a stack of deals. You know, we've got €500,000 euros in this case of deals in the negotiation stage. We can click on that number there, and that immediately shows us in this case the 2 opportunities that make up that value. We might say, well, actually, you know, we've got a whole stack of deals in the for the fall that are in the early stages. Let's just have a quick look at those. Are any of those deals that we could bring forward at all? So all I do is just click on that number, and it will highlight for me the deals that make up that specific number in the table below. And that, I think, is a real aid when you're going through the pipeline, and whether it's you're the VP of sales and you're going through the company pipeline, or whether you're looking at your own personal pipeline, then it's a real way to quickly understand what's going on behind the numbers. If you're using a keypad, and it's a keypad like mine, you can hover over there. If you press the control button with your finger and just click on the opportunity name there, you can obviously open that opportunity in a separate tab if you wanted to go and amend it and so on as well. And you can keep the first tab open of the report. So that's a real feature I like, and I think it's a way of really improving the effectiveness of pipeline reviews and pipeline reporting. So I'd really encourage you to do that. So that is almost it. We've tried to really focus on changes to the interface that just are easy to implement and have just really come about through our own experience of deploying Salesforce to really quite a number now of Lightning customers. But I just want to show you something else as well. In the Classic interface, there was always this concept of the console, but it is much improved in Lightning. And for people whose job it is, either whose ongoing job it is to make a lot of outbound phone calls, so you might have a telesales team either making sales or generating appointments for salespeople, or indeed salespeople whose job it is to spend a lot of time in the office, or maybe one day a week, just making phone calls. Then the console is a much easier way to do that. So this is a list of opportunities that might be closing this month, and what I can do is open up each opportunity in a separate tab, and that will give me a tab here, and I can open up multiple opportunities and work on them all at the same time. And it's a useful thing, if you phone the first one and they're not available, you phone the second one and they're not available, so on and so forth. But you get the idea how I'm going to get the detailed view in the main page here. So take a look at that. So, Ben, I don't know, just before we finish, whether we had any other questions?
There was one that we could answer quickly before we finish up. Do you recommend using the quarterly goal tracking function on the homepage? No, generally. I don't know if I've got an example of it here. Let's have a look. If you're familiar with it, it's the chart that appears as on the home page. I think it's a somewhat blunt tool. It's quarterly. It shows where you are in relation to 70% of your quota or your target amount. I personally, and it doesn't really give you any insight as to, for example, it doesn't tell you whether you've got enough pipeline to meet target and so on. It doesn't really tell you how you're comparing it against the target. In actual fact, there is no target tab in Salesforce. A lot of people kind of search in vain for the target tab. As it happened, I had it open here actually. This is a target app that we have, allows people to track sales performance against targets. So this month against versus sales target, and so on and so forth. Performance against target over the year, and conversion rates by person, and what have you. So I personally think we have a much more effective way a much more detailed and more effective way of tracking sales performance against targets. So I'm not a massive fan. Ben, I think it's a pretty sort of blunt tool. I don't actually, of all the Lightning users, I don't know that many people who actually use it. Okay, great. And I know there have been a few more questions throughout the webinar that we just haven't had time to cover, or we've left sort of the subject. So I've assured them that we will contact people via email after the webinar is completed, just to ask, answer any questions that we didn't get to cover on this directly.
Yeah.
So if you did ask a question and it hasn't been answered, don't worry, we will be in touch.
Yeah, absolutely. And I know we've recorded this session, Ben, so we can just tighten up the video just at the beginning in particular and so on, and just we'll send out to everybody a more compact recording on YouTube, hopefully tomorrow. We do have a blog post that will accompany the video, so we'll get some more information and images and everything else into that blog post, and we'll send that out either tomorrow or the day after if we can get the video edited in time. So we'll include this list of the items as well that we've gone through as well. So Ben, thank you for your hard work in organising the webinar. Everybody on the call, thank you very much indeed for attending. If you have any questions, then as Ben said, do not hesitate to get in touch with us. Hope this has been useful. Thank you.